This show contains profanity, advice you should never follow, humor that you might not enjoy. The names have been changed to protect the guilty. Do not try this at home.
Greetings, Yellow Blazers, Blue Blazers, Bill Bryson lovers, Bill Bryson haters, accident havers.
Oh, well, this is the new year, Pox. You can't start the new year with accident havers.
Welcome to the Pox Puss podcast, a proud member of the Appalachian Trials family. My name is Pox Holiday, and sitting to my right,
Puss in Boots.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about everything.
Good things.
Good things.
Good things.
So the day after Christmas, I was driving home with my wife and my 3 dogs in our pick-em-up truck. And it has, a king cab thing to it, but not like the crew cab. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like the small one.
There's like that little jump seat kind of thing.
A little
in
jump
the back
seat, yeah. And we have that thing flipped up.
Yeah.
And because our car it needed a new hub, needed a new wheel bearing, needed all kinds of stuff. So we're just like going down for a couple of days, no big deal. Cram the whole family into this thing, 4.5 hours down to go see mom.
It's the kind of truck that you expect to see mama in the front seat holding the car seat.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
yep,
yes,
no
yes. It is.
You don't have a baby, so it's okay for me to say.
Yeah,
that.
no. and I believe Taco the dog was probably being held at some point in time.
I'm sure she was.
And day after Christmas, heavy traffic, and I'm like, it's going to be one of those kind of drives. And then like this calm and peace came over me where it was like, hey, you know what? Not that bad, for this intersection. And there's this crazy spaghetti intersection of I-85, I-73, which I didn't even know was a thing, and 421 all come together in this one spaghetti bowl of interchanges. And as we're approaching that, I was like, traffic isn't so bad. Everything's going pretty well here. This is going to be great. Not a bad drive at all.
Everything's coming up Milhouse.
Exactly. And felt this like wobbly, like, oh, I think and I'm opening my mouth to say, I think we have a flat tire. And as I say that, the passenger side front tire passes us and drives. It goes down the median on the right. It goes down the shoulder. And so now we're on 3 wheels, like
hangs a Louie.
And we boom, 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 come off the shoulder.
God. Was the entire truck like going downhill at that point? Like was it still riding on all 3 tires, or did it tip down onto front corner?
It went on 3 wheels for a second, and then it kind of went down to that corner. Once we hit the shoulder,
God.
And so boom, comes off. And so then we're sitting there, just watching this tire perfectly roll down the grass.
You're on the median, right? Like you're in the shoulder.
I'm on the shoulder, yeah. And it's on the shoulder too. And I'm like,
God.
And so like I'm having this talk with the tire, like, just fall over. Just fall over. Just stop. Just stop. Just stop. Oh God.
Yep.
And please stop. Please stop. And then there was this overpass, and the tire starts going kind of up the hill. And I'm like, good. It's going to roll up that hill. It's going to lose its momentum. It starts rolling up that hill towards the overpass, and then, as if on magic, it makes a 90-degree turn and basically just like uses that to rocket propel itself across 6 lanes of interstate traffic.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh God. And I'll never forget, it was a champagne kind of colored Toyota Corolla, lightly taps its brakes. The thing rolls across, multiple cars, rolls across, hits the guardrail, stops a half a mile away from where it fell off of our car. So I'm just like in like fucking A mode. And so I just start walking. And I just started walking, and I'm walking. This guy pulls over. He's like, "Need any help?" And I'm like, "I think I'm calling AAA. I'm going to need way more help than probably you can get me, but thank you." cross 6 lanes of traffic, go get this wheel.
Crossed traffic?
Yeah, well, I found it. I mean, I needed to get it back.
Why?
Well, that tire wound up being absolutely fine. And so I just go over and get it, and then I'm just like rolling it back. And my wife's on the phone with AAA the whole time. And so I didn't even bother to look at the passenger side of the car when it happened. So but when I get down to the tire, there is a stud or a post, whatever, it's been called a million different things. You know, the thing you put your wheel onto, then the lug nuts go on top of.
Right.
Is sticking out of one of the holes in the where the lug nuts go.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that hadn't crossed my mind. I just kind of thought, because what had happened was a week earlier we had all 4 of our brakes replaced on the truck.
Yeah.
And so they apparently just did not tighten them down tight enough. Some people went online when I showed the picture said, oh, they tightened them down too much, and it turned out no, they just hadn't tightened them down enough. And so long story short, we get towed. They can't tow us back to our house because it's the day after Christmas, and they were going to leave us on the side of the road for like 8 hours to get us towed back, because we were like 200 miles from our house.
Right.
And so they tow us to Greensboro, get the car fixed, whatever. But every single person is just like, oh my God. But the thing is that we have all 3 of our dogs with us too, so they can't ride in the tow truck. And so they ride in our truck on top of the back of a flatbed truck.
Toon says the driving cat style.
And they loved it. They thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
Journey's done that 3 times, and he's loved it every time. He's just like, and I mean, he is like, well, the driver's seat's mine now. And he stands and he puts his little feet on the steering wheel, and he looks around like he's a fucking princess on a parade. He's so excited about it.
But it was one of those situations. There's
who took the front seat?
Scraps, the biggest dog.
Good.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And I have this wonderful profile picture of him just like with the biggest smile on the back of the truck before we got inside. But it was in classic. You said everything's coming up Milhouse. There was an episode of The Simpsons where I think it was The Simpsons where Marge and Homer, like, he's just like, he comes home like early from work. The house is a wreck. He's like, screw it. Let's go treat ourselves. The kids are at school. Let's go treat ourselves. And the dishes are, in the sink and all that kind of thing. And while they're out treating themselves to a day at the spa or something like that, something happens to one of the children and they have to come home. And when they come home, it looks like a really dirty home and the stuff's piled everywhere. And it's like, these aren't fit parents. That was basically the way I felt in our car, where it was just like, I don't normally drive in this thing. And then it wound up actually after the fact destroying one of our tires. When our rear tire fell off, it didn't fall off, but when it came off the shoulder, somehow it had hit a nail or something like that. And so, like, it rolled for a little while, and basically the sidewall was destroyed. And so when we inflated it did okay on the ride home, but whenever we were home, we needed to reinflate it, and like literally like fist-sized tumors popped out of the side of it. No. So I went to the guy we normally take it to, and the owners of this place are the members of the Mountain Faith Band, which were real big on America's Got Talent.
Okay.
And I think I told the story where I went there one time, and this guy came up to me and he was like, I seen you on the TV, pointing at me, and I'm like looking at my phone like, huh? He's like, I know who you are. I saw you on the TV. And there's a guy standing like 5 feet away from me, also waiting for his car, with a big, long, like huge, like Duck Dynasty style beard.
Right.
And this guy comes up, he's like, I seen you fellas on the TV. Y'all were playing guitar. And I was like, I said, sir, I don't know how to play. No, sorry. I said, maybe you're confusing us with the guys from Duck Dynasty because of our beards. He's like, no, I've seen y'all. And like, he walked away like pissed. And we're like, I look at the other guy, he looks at me, I'm like, what the fuck? And then when they pull a car away, I look over and I see the Mountain Faith Band, and I'm like, oh, I think I've heard of them.
Yeah. And
then turns out they were one of the finalists on America's Got Talent. And the whole family like works at this place and at this tire company. It was a garage. And so it's funny because the ones though that it's just good old boys. It's literally like you walk into the garage and it's like you just grab somebody like, hey, you help me kind of thing. But you can tell the ones that are in the band because they have these like beautifully cropped goatees now and things. So now they have this, I guess they have a little bit extra money. So they hired this Russian guy. And so when I got my tire fixed, he's like, you come here. And he brings me in and he's like, did you drive this car? I can't do a Russian accent. He's like,
okay.
you drive this car on, you drive this tire on when it was flat? And I was like, no, like the front of he's like, here, look. And like he circled all the problems with this tire. And I'd already brought in like a new tire for him. I just needed him to put a new tire on.
Right.
And he's like, here, look, this is what happens when you drive on flat tire. And I'm like, yeah, it really wasn't our choice. And he's like, and now look at this. And he flips it over and there's a nail. And I'm like, oh, well, that's something. And he's like, yes, there's a nail. And I was like, cool. I was like, does this affect the new tire? He's like, no. And I'm like, okay. And it was one of those, I walk away going like, you just called me in there to berate me.
Yeah. Russians, am I right?
Am I right, folks?
Ooh.
Hey, but all of this, some of that will probably be edited out. All of this leads me to a topic that kind of popped into my head. You know, there's a point in time in your through hike when everything's coming up Milhouse. Mm-hmm. And then, boom, the bottom falls out. Mm-hmm. And like for me, like everything was coming up Milhouse when I got to Kinkora. Mm-hmm. But then, like the day or 2 days after Kinkora, the sole of my boot delaminated. Have you had anything like that?
Well, you've set me up royally to to be that guy, to quote the quintessential outdoor movie
Wild
from a quintessential outdoor person. So have you seen the movie 180 Degrees South?
I have not.
All right. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's got a really good soundtrack. So in the movie 180 Degrees South, this guy is I'm not gonna tell you about the whole movie.
Yeah, don't spoil it for other people.
But there's a point where he is sailing a boat, and he's like sailing from California down. He's trying to get to Patagonia, but he's basically trying to like make his own way to Patagonia, and he's trying to do it. However, So he ends up taking a job as like crewing on this sailboat to get. He's just going south. He doesn't even know where they're going. But the mast on the sailboat breaks, and Yvon Chouinard, founder of North Face, is then quoted in the movie as saying, "The word adventure has gotten overused. For me, adventure is when everything goes wrong. That's when the adventure starts." So thank you for that for that segue.
Absolutely.
But you know, like, I mean, it's true. My best stories of any outdoor adventure has always been when we got caught in a freak rainstorm, or we get, you know, like when something completely unexpected happened that, you know, it's when everything goes completely right, it's kind of a boring story. Right. So, you know, like it's just kind of nice. But, you know, for me, Parisburg, Virginia, I know I've talked about my experience in Parisburg, but same thing, leaving Kinkora. Everything's coming up Milhouse.
We're definitely going to have to explain that at some point.
Yeah, well, but
I'll just do it by dropping in Everything's Coming Up Milhouse on YouTube.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, leaving Parisburg, and I mean, going into Parisburg, I was like in a great place, and I hung out in Parisburg longer than I should have.
Yeah.
I feel like if I had left Parisburg in half the amount of time that I stayed in Parisburg, I probably could have. It's one of the. I feel like that was a little karma on my part. Like I was being gluttonous in just staying in town too long and having too much fun. But hiking out of Parisburg was when it started raining on me, and there's nothing worse than like having all of your clothes clean and your hair washed and like feeling fresh and getting rained on when you're trying to go, you know, like
Yeah.
it was just, that was the start. And that was the start of it. And slogged through, I mean, and within an hour, it was torrential summertime thunderstorm.
I'm sorry, I just keep thinking about Milhouse.
Yeah, well,
sorry.
It's okay. But like, you know, it was one of those thunderstorms where you're like, this is.
It is you've got to be fucking kidding me.
Well, it was one of those, like,
touche,
it
God.
was one of those times where I kept thinking to myself, like, this is it. This is when I die. This is when I get electrocuted because I don't give a fuck enough to, like, take proper precautions in this electrical storm. Like, where I'm just walking, I'm walking as if I don't give a shit. And there is lightning strikes all around me, and I'm just like, fuck you guys. I'm just walking. I'm gonna get to, I'm already completely soaked. All of my freshness is out of my clothes. I'm gonna get to the closest shelter, and I'm gonna hang up all my shit.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna figure something the fuck out. And I did that. I got to a shelter. It was actually a shelter that had a built-in fireplace, which was kind of odd, but nice. Yeah. And it was one of the, I always hate the shelters that have built-in bunk beds, because I'm like, well, this is the worst allocation of space ever. But it ended up working out that it was just like the right amount of people. There wasn't too many people.
Yeah.
So everybody got a bunk and it was okay. But I tried to dry out my clothes, and that was, you know, slept through the night, and it poured all night long. Got up the next morning, and I went to put on my soggy boots, and when I pulled the laces, they had just like dry rotted, and they just broke off in my hands, like just disintegrated in my hands. And then I duct taped that boot on. Actually, no, I restrung that one with some P-cord, and I went to tie my other boot on, and all of the lugs, like 3 of the lugs on my boot just popped, and it had just like completely just rotted out. And I was like, that's it. Hiking into town, don't know where town is, just gonna find, there was a road like, you know, 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the shelter.
Oh, and you came up on it, and there was a guy plowing a field, right? And he offered you some candy.
I eeny, meeny, miny mowed
the house.
When I got to.
I was thinking of wild.
When I got to the.
That's where I was going with that.
Offered me a drink, and then took me home to his.
He said,
wife.
"There's one more thing I like to do before I go home." And he reached under, got that paper bag out. Oh, candy.
What's it gonna be?
It's just candy.
Yeah. It's a dirty trick.
Too bad it wasn't heroin.
It's really a dirty trick.
Everything's coming up, Milhouse. That will be the title of this episode.
How do you spell Amicalola?
Amicaola? Like amicable. How do you spell amicable?
How do you spell amicable? Amicalola.
L-O-L-A-O-La.
I want to wash my hands, my face and hair with snow.
Yes, we. I braved the first blizzard of 2016 to get here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where that ends. Speaking of snow,
Good story, bro.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it woke up and it was sleeting.
Yeah.
And then it turned to sleet and snow. Then it just turned to rain, and then it was just like big old fat flakes and
little bitty stinging flakes.
Snow flakes that come sideways. Oh, that was bad. I don't like the way that sounded.
I
don't have a good Alabama. I'm just mainly Western North Carolina redneck is my forte.
Fine. That's fine. I will go out on a limb and say the birds are going apeshit
Yeah.
outside right now. Like, is that what happens to North Carolina birds when it snows? Like, they are going bananas.
Snow. Let's see here. I got something.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi, Pox and Puss. This is Thor, section hiker, 2008.
Not him.
Just whenever I get finished.
No.
Was calling. I listened to all the episodes at least once, and now working my way back through, and listened to OPP 6, and was reminded of Pox's story about using a money order to get cash, and once again amused by how pleased he was by his discovery of being able to do this. During the story, you share how you think that Port Clinton does not have any ATMs, and I just wanted to confirm that is correct. That Port Clinton does not have any ATMs. Still, just did a section hike through there this fall, and got to the Port Clinton Hotel. Was going to spend the night there, and their debit card and credit card machine was down, and the only way to get to an ATM was to hitch a ride to somewhere a couple miles away to use an ATM. So. Could have used Pox's advice there and gone to the post office, but forgotten about that. So enjoy the show, guys. Thanks a lot. This call's after nothing other than confirm Pox.
so I accidentally. Now, of course, I fucked that up. But so were you taking a selfie?
I am taking a selfie right now.
For what?
I
Oh, to have a microphone in front of your face.
What? No, the little girl would text me and he's like, "What are you up to?"
Oh.
And I'm like, "Guess what I'm doing right now."
No, I didn't mean that in any weird way. I just meant
I interpreted it as a weird thing.
did not.
You made me feel self-conscious.
So it's funny, earlier when you were talking about Parisburg, for like 10 seconds of that story of you talking about Parisburg, I had Port Clinton in my mind. And and honestly, literally, I listened to the first 5 seconds of that call the first time it came through, and I'm like, oh, I'll just save it. You know, I like it to be fresh, you know, on the show. That's how we like it, fresh. That's why we're going to listen to
Finger
a call.
guns?
Yes, the finger guns. That's why we're going to listen to a call from September in a minute. But I think I've talked about this, but I probably talked about it in year one. And unless you're somebody who's working your way back through the episodes, you probably forgot. On my way down into Parisburg, I kept passing some folks who were like, there's no other way to describe it other than goths decided to go hiking. And so I met this guy. It was like right before, if you're going north, you're kind of cruising along in, you know, Pennsylvania fashion, a little bit up, a little bit down, blah, 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 blah. But then there's just like this steep descent down into Port Clinton. And so right before I get to that, I meet this guy all in black. He might have been wearing Jnco jeans, I'm not sure. And with the "We are hiking to Georgia," and he's like, "Yeah, my couple of friends of mine and I are hiking to Georgia, hiking south." Like, "Oh, cool, right on." You know, like I'm not going to discount anybody's hike. Okay, go for it, Jnco. You know, whatever you want to do. The next person I meet is, I won't say morbidly obese, but was definitely not having a good hike out of Port Clinton.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if she had one or two ferrets, but I just remember being like, hello. Like it was just one of those nods when you pat, like somebody's coming up the hill, you know.
Yeah.
That's maybe a little bit of, you know, courtesy. You should let some people know, like, hey, if someone's hiking up, you're going down, let them pass. So I was letting them pass, and it was like, hello, one of the ferrets around the neck, and maybe another one packed away somewhere. I really truly cannot remember if it was one or two ferrets.
You know that there's a rodent in your hair, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like
Good.
that, you know, okay, right on.
You have a snake mouse on you.
I remember asking the guy, like, so where'd you guys start? He's like, oh, Port Clinton. And he's like, you know, 2 miles in, like, right on, man, you know, do your thing. Go for it. I remember meeting, and again, I probably talked about these two guys. I remember meeting these two guys at, in Lincoln, New Hampshire, at the ski lodge you could stay in just outside of town. And Barf was almost very close to coming today, but he wound up having to work, unfortunately, on a Sunday, and exactly. But he was very close, and he did give me a hard time about whenever I asked you what time you want to record, you said brunchish time.
Yeah. And
I said that to him. He says, "What's become of you?" And I said, "I'm giving you the time frame I was given."
Me.
but what is brunch time?
Brunch time?
I'd say 11 something. 10:30 to 11:30.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. It literally made me almost stop and buy champagne and orange juice when you say it.
I mean, that sounds delicious.
Mm-hmm.
I threw a party. I threw a New Year's Eve recovery party on New Year's Day.
That's right.
And
I would have come had I had more than a 3-wheel vehicle. Yeah.
It's all good. And I bought mimosa makings.
Mm-hmm.
And one person had one mimosa. And I had the rest. And that was too much mimosa. The recovery party became...
Too much mimosa on the dance floor.
Yeah, how do I say this? The recoverer became the recovery...
Let's see how this works.
It didn't.
I hit pause.
Oh, okay.
All they're doing is breathing in. We'll give him a second shot.
You gotta clear their schnoodle.
Hey, what's up? I'm looking for Pox Holiday. My name is Treebeard. I met you at the hiker feed at the Knock in April, I guess.
Does it drive you
you
nuts
gave me
when
some
people say
beers
the
and
knock?
interviewed me for your podcast.
What's that?
Does it drive you nuts when people call it the knock?
Yeah, because nobody that works at NOC calls it the knock.
The knock.
But it's just it's one of those things that
I hate it.
that happens. Yeah. Let's see.
It's up there with Appalachian.
I have not listened to this, but I'm going to go.
He wants a ride.
Well, yeah, there is that. Some people. No, he. I interviewed.
Take all of this out. I don't want any of this on the recording. But anyway.
What about what?
It drives me nuts when we interrupt calls. But I'm always the one that interrupts them. So.
Well, but here, I know what this guy's about to ask. I went down to the Knock.
Shut your fucking face.
I went down the NOC one day and was just like, I'm going to take my stuff. I took my handheld recorder, which does not work very well. And I was like, I'm just going to interview people. I got a free day. And so I went down, and there was like this, like, they had like, I don't think it was anything. Maybe there was maybe it was a Thru-Hiker day, but they did feed a lot of Thru-Hikers and stuff like that. And they had a couple of bands, and like, I wound up getting drunk with a lot of hikers. And at one point in time, like I just set up my handheld recorder on a tripod, and we all just stood around, and I have no idea what people said. And so it was about 5 or 6 hours of straight up recordings. I did interview like 3 guys. I was like, oh, I'm going to interview these 3 guys. And they were sitting there, and I interviewed them. And then, so yeah, I interviewed like a bunch of people, but it's going to require me going through 5.5 hours of just drunk talk on a picnic table that when I first listened to it, 10 months ago, it didn't really sound great. But
I've had one night stand in my entire life.
Continue.
And it was with somebody that I kind of knew, and to be honest, it was a favor to somebody else.
Somebody else?
Yeah, because she wanted his friend. And so I was like,
I'll throw you a bone. Hey,
all right, there we go. And at some point, right prior to the act itself,
yeah.
at some point, it was determined that we needed a beer run, and it was determined that I was the soberest. So we all got into my car, drove to the local Harris Teeter, But, and, you know, like, she bought something, I bought something, you know, we each bought like
Everybody was of age to buy beer.
We each bought like a 6-pack of something delicious.
Yeah.
And then
Hornsby's apple cider.
my one night stand gets like a case of natural ice or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I automatically was like,
Here we go.
okay. And we've all been there, but
I don't know that we all have.
it tastes like pennies. It's just
Oh, as far as the beer goes, yes.
yeah. No.
This isn't going in the show, is it?
I don't care.
Okay.
So we check out, we get in my car, we drive back onto campus, which we all had to live on campus because I went to such a small school.
Right.
We drive back onto campus, and they have set up the once a semester roadblock. And I'm like, fuck, like, all right. And it should be noted that, like, for a small school, it was a large campus. You had to cross 1 2-lane road to get to the parking lot of the shopping center. So
Yeah.
it's not like don't drink and drive, but yeah. So I get back onto campus and, you know, you had anything to drink? Yes, I have.
I'll be honest.
I'll
yes.
be honest with you. Yes, I have imbibed alcohol.
But I am by far the soberest person of anybody that's getting laid in this car tonight. Which is doubly wrong.
So then the cop looks in the back seat, and here's my one night stand.
Betrothed.
Who's my betrothed? Who was a transfer student.
Oof.
Like a newish transfer student. How old are you, son? 19. And I was just like, oh no. Is this where I get arrested? Because he has a case of Natural Light in his lap.
Statutory drinking.
Oh no. No. And yeah. So yeah. None of us got into trouble, which I'm kind of amazed. Like, actually quite amazed by. But yeah, so it's a good story. Good time. Good time had by all. Hot rabbi.
So in keeping with our book club idea, and by our I mean mine, and so hopefully people have picked up Carrot Quinn's book at this point in time, and we'll talk about that in the coming month or so. But it got me thinking about the books that I read while I was through hiking, and the books that I also read leading up to my through hike. And keep in mind, when I through hiked the Appalachian Trail, I was 21/22. And so a lot of these books are probably either books that some of our listeners might have grown out of at this point, or just don't care about, or they're also a few of these are definitely cliche books. But but before I left, I read Tom Wolfe's Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. I read that, like, I think I finished it like 2 or 3 days before I went. And Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test is kind of like, if you're a hippy-dippy kind of kid, it's the stories of the early days of acid and the Grateful Dead. And it's written from the point of view of white seersucker suit Tom Wolfe. But it's pretty cool, and it also has what's his name? Not from On the Road. Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. But I recommend this book to everyone who grew up in the South, especially young men. It's called Keeper of the Moon by an author named Tim McLaurin. He was a professor at NC State, and then he wound up being a professor at UNC. He grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, in the country. He wound up becoming a merchant marine. He was a snake handler. Really interesting dude. But Tim McLaurin's Keeper of the Moon was one I read before. While I was hiking, I almost hate saying this one out loud, but I read On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Why not? If you're in your early 20s and you're hiking on the road.
Embrace the cheese.
Yeah, exactly. Follow that up with some more cheesiness. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I've read it twice. I read it once on the AT, and I literally finished it while sitting on a crapper in Las Vegas, like 5 years later. I read One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. I also found Mother Night, which is a Kurt Vonnegut book, which was made into a movie starring one Nick Nolte.
Oh, my.
Basically, he was a U.S. informant who became the Nazi propaganda radio guy.
He was a good-looking man in his youth.
Oh, he was. Let's see. I also read Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. Have you read that? Mm-hmm. And I love that book. And it's also, so if you go down this list of things, you can tell that I liked the Grateful Dead when I was 21 or 22.
No.
Between Electric Acid Test.
That doesn't.
One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey and Cat's Cradle by Vern. I also, at the time, for some reason, my grandmother had given me a year subscription to Rolling Stone. I think maybe my mom told her that, or I don't know. So in my drop boxes, I would get like whatever Rolling Stone came, and sometimes I would take them and then I would leave them in a shelter or something like that, figuring, hey, if nothing else, it can be fire starter. So I read a lot of Rolling Stones. The other book I've read a couple of other books while working in the outdoors. One of them was Illusions by Richard Bach, who also wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Illusions, I think it's an essential read for everyone who works in the outdoors and that kind of thing. But yeah, those are just a few of the ones that I read. Again, not a definitive list. I definitely read some other crap. I think we've talked about before, and I can't remember if we haven't. Barf one day. You find some books in shelter. Sometimes there will just be a book just sitting there that somebody's like, I read this, here it is. And I cannot remember the name of the book, but it was something called like The Monster. And it was the story, it was by the author of Jaws, and it was about a squid, a giant squid. And I think I've talked about before where one night we camped halfway between a couple of shelters. It was just a weird day. And we just camped halfway between a couple of shelters, and there was like this like stomping around our tents. And it was just one of those where like you're just silent. It's not the ostrich story, but it was like something else was just obviously.
You're pretty convinced it's
a bear.
It's gonna get you.
Yeah, it's gonna get you. And and you've got your ladybug spider co, which is 2.5 inches long, exposed. And I'm like sitting there, and it's like, do you hear that? Yeah, I hear that. And so then. We obviously lived through the night, and then the next morning I'm in my tent and I hear Barf go, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, just packing up my stuff inside of here. And he's like, well, get out. I want to show you something. I'm like, okay. And so he has the book in his hand. And he has actually already, before I know it, has put white gas on the book. And he literally burns the book in the middle of our campsite and goes, no one should read this book. It dies here.
All right.
The Monster. But yeah, so, but did you read much while you were out hiking in 2009?
I didn't read a lot, mostly because I was pretty snobby about carrying a book.
Right.
I'll totally admit that. But let's see. Early on, I'd say in the southern half,
I'm not much of a reader. I like television.
I really enjoy. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything clever.
Netflix.
I do Netflix marathons.
I don't know no television. I watch Netflix.
Yeah. Exactly. It's mostly Hulu. Let's see. If you ever care to read Walking with Spring, just check all of the hiker boxes anywhere in the South during...
Because it's there.
Because there's volumes of it. Because everybody thinks that they're going to start with it and read it. And but I pulled a copy out and read some at a hostel, and then I started putting it in my bounce box, and I would read it when I knew that I was going to be taking a 0 day or something like that, but I didn't carry it with me. And then somewhere up north, when I was heading south, I was at like a secondhand store, and they had a really cool like hardback, like really nice copy of Walden, which I picked up and read.
I bought 6 bags of grain, followed by 8 bags of seeds. Walden.
I read the first couple of chapters, and
Which is a goddamn grocery list.
I totally drank the Kool-Aid, though. I was like, this is my life. This is speaking to me. And then at some point I mailed that home, and it's been sitting on a shelf since. I haven't picked it back up.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to insult
okay.
Walden, which everybody says you need to read Walden, and you're just like, Walden is the book version of The Wire.
Tell me how you feel.
It's the book version of The Wire. Once you get through the first 6 episodes of The Wire, it gets good. And it's like, that's the way Walden is. It's like, once you get through the first 3 lists of groceries that he bought to take on his thing, it's great. It's like Aldo Leopold, a Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold.
Uh-huh.
As a Parks and Recreation major, Aldo Leopold is the one that is just Fagua style crammed down your throat.
Right.
And you're just like, this is boring. It's like trying to read Shakespeare today, I imagine, for a young man or woman.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead about the books you loved. I'm sorry.
No. Well,
I'm just being a dick.
When you were talking about the Walden grocery list, it made me think, did you hear about this woman that there's no way I could pronounce her name, but there's a 70-year-old Siberian woman who's lived her entire life in the wilderness, and she, for the first time in her life, is going to a doctor because she was complaining of some leg pain caused by the bitter cold. And I mean, like, it's fucking Siberia. Like, I'm pretty sure. Let's see. It says temperatures were well below minus 40 degrees Celsius. Yeah, this is a lady that at one point had eaten her own shoes. This was some legitimate shit. But yeah, so she's 70 years old, and she's never been to a doctor, never had anything that had electricity or anything like that, and her family was so isolated that World War II came and passed without the family knowing it.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I did see something about her.
Isn't that nuts?
It is. And also, like, within the last year, there's been that guy who lived in the woods of Maine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he lived in the woods of Maine and would just, like, break into people's houses and steal, like, little bits of stuff at a time.
Weird.
Like a pair of socks here and there, and then a little bit of food here and there.
That's really creepy.
But, like, he just, like, stayed out in the woods and they just caught him. And, like, he wouldn't have been in trouble had he not broken in people's houses and steal stuff every once in a while. And I think somebody, like, set up a camera and saw him, and somebody's like, that's blah, 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 who left years ago. Like,
that's
what?
So creepy.
But yeah, just, like, living out in the woods.
That was like, my husband was just telling me that in, I think it was in Japan. Like, this guy moved into an apartment in Japan, and he felt like when he moved in, he felt like the place was almost haunted. Like there, and he just kind of had that feeling all the time. Like, there's something else here, and like every now and then he would notice that like something was in a slightly different place than he had left it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it turned out that there was like a woman living in a hidden cabinet in his apartment, and when he would leave for work, she would like come out and eat a little bit of his food, and like, what?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like,
God,
it's so crazy.
Oh, well, when Barf and I were roommates, he told me about this book that he had just read, and somebody out there probably could tell us what it was, but like, there was somebody who had, I think like somebody had painted themselves blue, and that's like just a weird part of it, but they lived in the air duct, like they lived in the air conditioning vents of the house. And it was just like, it was one of those things you hear and you're like, I'm fucked up for life now.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking there's somebody in here.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a family living in my attic. Like,
exactly. Let's see here. So, in 2015, Appalachian Trail use breaks records.
You want to say that one more time?
Yeah, I do, because I use it out. Appalachian Trail use breaks records in 2015. It's actually
Use.
Yes, use.
I thought you were trying to say youths.
Utes.
Use.
According to the Smoky Mountain News, the number of people choosing to thru-hike the AT using an alternative route shot up 139% from last year, with 291 passing through Harper's Ferry who were thru hikers, but not of the traditional Georgia Domain variety. We've had a lot of people on like Facebook and Twitter tell us that they're starting at a different place this year, and it does definitely seem like the non-alternative route is increasing for 2016.
I was surprised this summer when I got on trail at Harper's Ferry how many other people were getting on at Harper's Ferry for flip-flops.
Yeah, the flip-flop seems to be the way, and then there's what is the one I've mentioned it on here before, but the what do they call it? They're calling it the like the good weather route.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's basically like you're starting in the south in the beginning, and then you jump up someplace, and it's like it involves like 4 different sections of the trail, but you're always hiking in good weather. It's like you hit the middle and the end of your hike or something like that. But yeah, because I mean I've talked to some people who are starting in Georgia, and some people who are, starting in, like, where was it? Somebody the other day was talking about they were starting someplace in, like, Southern Virginia. Like, that was going to be their starting point.
So, and
I think it was just more, like, because of where they lived.
Right.
And they were going to start there and go north and then hike south. But, yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. I guess it just involves maybe that's this generation were told to think outside the box growing up, and they are, I don't know.
Because you and I are both millennials.
Right. We were told that we could be
Generation Xer.
We were told that we could be anything we wanted to be, so we did, and now
we both have tons of ribbons and trophy.
Yeah.
and participation trophies.
Yep. Lots of participation trophies and college degrees that we're not using.
Yeah. I've changed jobs.
Yeah.
Similar to my old job.
Yeah. If you want to go to school for underwater basket weaving, you do it, honey bunny.
I might as well have.
You are amazing, and you can do anything you want to do except underwater basket weaving when you need to provide for a family.
Yeah.
Not that I'm bitter.
Parks and Recreation is the underwater basket weaving of. Somebody the other day just turned to me like, oh, does that mean you want to be a national park ranger? I'm like, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's the only thing I can do with my degree.
Yep.
I had somebody the other day say, oh, we have a job opening up for a recreational therapist.
Not the same.
No,
Not the
just
same
has
thing.
the same word in it.
Yep.
But no, and I was like, well, I'll take a look at it, and it would need to be Dr. Holiday for me to have that job.
Oh, all right.
I don't think an associate's and a bachelor's counts if I add them
Every
together.
appointment is a doctor's appointment once you're a doctor.
Boom.
All right, so we haven't read our 5-star reviews in a while, so let's get down to brass tacks and read some of those. Shar W. on September 12th, 2015, wrote, planning our Nobo 2024. My husband tentatively and I excitedly are planning a Nobo hike 2024 when our nest is empty. This is a very new aspiration for me, and I've begun dreaming, thinking, planning, reading, watching, and listening about the AT for the last 2 months. Your podcast, the first I have ever listened to, and I have listened to all the episodes, is great and has been very much appreciated during this pre-AT journey that I have embarked upon. Thank you for the laughs, energy, time, effort, gross aritas that you have drank, coordination, innovation, and creativity that you've put into this podcast that has really helped me to shape the beginning stages of my journey with the AT. I continue to hold many questions about the AT, and maybe someday I will send you an email or drive to North Carolina and buy you a beer and ask you questions that a hiking virgin has to ask in order to get an insider scoop, because I do not know anyone else that's completed a thru-hike. Thanks again. You're so welcome. My new favorite podcast by Lalina Kapika. Kapika?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Ooh, sorry if I butchered that. I recently discovered Pox and Puss after a trip to Red River Gorge in Kentucky for my first backpacking experience. My friend started listening to you before he brought up the Diva Cup tea story. I was slightly horrified, but hilariously delighted. I needed to hear more. He directed me to the podcast. I almost caught up on all the old episodes. I listen at work. I disturb my coworkers from the laughter in cubicle. Your stories make me want to get out and do more backpacking of my own, which I already wanted to do after my first taste earlier this summer. Keep it up. Love listening to y'all. Thank you so much.
Nice.
JJJ Jason. Poop. I feel like there's not enough poop talk. Can we talk about poop more? Poop. We sure can, Jason.
Controversial subject.
We sure can. Glonk writes, excellent podcast. Found this podcast while searching for a niche after hearing about her FKT on the AT. I'm hooked. I'm now working my way through all the old episodes. This is now my favorite podcast. Please make more. Can you talk about the PCT more? I know you can. We can try.
We can try.
We sure can try.
Maybe we should get some PCT people on.
Yeah. If you're a PCT person, Glonk, why don't you give us a call? Maybe we'll interview you. Funny as hell and informative. That is blah 221793421.
Were there 3,700 whatever 20 before them?
I don't know. Blah. Gives an unvarnished, quirky, and not safe for work look into the life of Nate Thru-Hiker.
Mm-hmm.
Hilarious hosts and solid storytelling. Pox and Puss play off each other very well. Why, thank you. You would have never guessed that by our first interaction.
That made you
Pox
cry.
Holiday made me cry over taking a 20-minute break when it should have been a 15-minute break. He was a dick.
Still am.
Still is.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm medicated now. I'm good.
You're a little more even keeled now.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Does it drain creativity occasionally? You betcha.
All right. Deduarmo. And technically, this is a 4-star review.
Well, you know.
But he also reviewed on January 1st. of the new year. I feel like I wasn't going to read you, but now I'm gonna, because you are our first review of the year. So
There we go.
You snuck in there. Number 1, I laughed so hard it ruined my throat for a couple hours. That's what she said. Number 2, I'm seriously considering buying a kilt. Number 3, boiling a Diva cup and drinking the water is perfectly safe. Number 4, I might buy a backpack.
Right on.
Podcast by Ron D.
Oh, Ron D.
Oh, Ron D. I love the show. You both have a great sense of humor. The stories the both of you and guests share are fantastic. I find humor and comfort in knowing I'm not that weird after all. Thanks for all the good times, familia. Hashtag, get your hike on. Get your hike on.
You know what I was thinking about?
Tell me.
Maybe we should have Flo on again.
Okay.
I think maybe Flo should be an annual guest.
All right.
People like Flo.
Yeah.
He's tough not to get along with.
Yeah. Was it Flo? Was it Flo that was here and needed to use the restroom?
That was ice cold.
That was ice cold. Okay.
I know exactly where that was going. And I actually
Still so embarrassed.
randomly thought about it this morning.
Yep. Still so embarrassed about
I
it.
don't know if it made it into the podcast. It might
It's okay.
have.
It may not.
But
It may
we'll just
have.
let it
It
hang
may
out there
not.
for people to wonder.
It takes a lot to embarrass me. The things are, I gave very explicit directions on how to get. It's not that big a house.
No.
On how to get
No.
to the bathroom. I just don't know how he ended up in the only room he was not supposed to be in.
Yeah,
the
he
house.
took the second left when he should have taken the first left.
Yeah.
And then he
So
came
embarrassing.
into your bathroom den of sin.
So embarrassing. Ugh.
Do we have anything else going on?
I don't think so.
It's a rare one. We've only been recording for almost 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours. We're going to come up with a regular length episode.
How about that?
Something feels wrong.
You know, so earlier today, my husband, first thing this morning, in a really supportive husbandy kind of way, before either of us had gotten out of bed, said, I'm going to go to McDonald's. What do you want for breakfast? Which is so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And I said,
It's so sweet.
It is. It's really,
it is.
It is really sweet of him.
It is.
So I said that I wanted an Egg McMuffin and an oatmeal. And so
They make oatmeal at McDonald's?
They do. It's actually really good.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. It's got lots of apples and raisins and stuff in it. It's good.
I trust you.
It's good. And they don't put a shit ton of nuts in it, which is awesome because I hate nuts.
Is it brown sugar?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it is kind of sweet. I wouldn't imagine that it is sugar free by any means, but
No.
but it's good.
Yeah.
So he leaves to go get McDonald's. He comes back home. He comes inside and he's like, it's sleeting a little bit. And I'm like, sleeting, really? And I look outside and it's like big, puffy snowflakes. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's snowing now. And it's snowing and snowing and snowing. And eventually that changed to back to sleet and then
Yeah.
to rain for a little bit and then back to puffy snow for a while. And then, but it just kept doing that. And it was one of those things that, like, at first I thought, really glad that I'm not hiking in this.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, it's a good thing that, like, there's probably nobody on trail right now. And then I was like, no, of course there's somebody on trail right now. There's crazy southbounders that have decided that winter hiking is like their new pleasure sport.
Yeah.
There's always somebody that starts their through hike on the first of the year, which is always crazy to me, but there's
Right.
always there's always one of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what would possess you to think that that's a great idea. I mean,
No.
if you're listening, call us and let us know what your motivation was and if it was a good idea or not, because I'm curious, honestly.
Yeah, and I can't remember if you and I talked about this. Everything, once I get here, everything is on mic, but I can't remember if it was said to be on mic.
Right.
But trust us, folks. We know about the Hiking Viking. We are in talks. We almost spoke this morning, but he had he's he had a couple mountains to finish to get through the whites, and I think he wanted to get through the whites today. For those of you who are not familiar with the Hiking Viking, go to Facebook. Just look up the Hiking Viking. I believe on Twitter he is Real Hiking Viking. Just go back and look at his pictures, because he's hiking southbound on the AT. Started a few weeks ago. Just go back and look at the picture that he took looking down into the Milhouse Notch. It's intimidating, to say the very least. And then take a look. He has a blog as well where he talks about how he went through it. And just imagine, for those of you who have through hiked and gone through the Notch, just imagine going through it with like a couple of feet of snow, and nobody's been through it, and so you're making up the path as you go. And you know, it's huge and wide, and it's like I just couldn't imagine it. I just couldn't imagine it. And he's done all the whites in the middle of all this, and what?
I just can't. I would knock so many teeth out. Like,
yes. Well, think about it. We talked to Little Mac in 2013 at Trail Days, and he's somebody that I hiked with on occasion in 1998. He spent like over 24 hours stuck because he fell in the Milhouse Notch.
Oh my God.
He fell and injured himself and was basically stuck in a position where he could not get out for over 24 hours. And that was in good weather. Maybe it was damp, but trying to go through that thing.
I mean,
ugh.
I went through the Milhouse Notch pretty much the heat of the summer.
Yeah. Bluebirds on your shoulders and shit.
It was still fucking cold down there.
Oh, yeah.
It was still cold
That's
and
right.
damp.
There is a difference.
And,
yeah.
there was still frozen ice underneath
That's right.
boulders.
Same thing.
There's still that goddamn moose down there, for frike's sake. So, yeah, I can't imagine what it would be like. It just strikes me as one of those places that, never sees sunlight,
Yeah. Yeah.
Just never.
Yeah, there's definitely parts, because I remember slipping under something and looking in, and there was an icicle. There's a caveman. There was an icicle. You're just like,
Yep.
I'm coming through here in August or September, and good God. So definitely look up the Real Hiking Viking on the on Twitter and on
the
Facebook, and dick pics on the Snapchat. But I don't know. Actually, if you look at his Facebook page, Scott Jurek ain't got nothing on the Hiking Viking. He's just standing there with a rock over his junk.
What did I just see? I think that I just saw somebody's making a naked hiker calendar, maybe?
Huh.
Yeah. I'm into it.
Yeah, I guess so. That was the when we used to work at the 3-letter big box outdoor retailer. The first thing that would always get picked up by the employees,
The women climbers.
The women rock climbers.
Yep. Every time.
Every time after Christmas, it would get marked down to 50%, and everybody would get the female rock climber.
And they're always in bikinis,
climbing in a thong kind of thing
for really no reason. But yeah, it was always that. And yeah, what was it? I also remember
the Santa Claus with snowshoes, Santa Claus camping, Santa Claus with reindeer camping around a campfire. Those were always
Santa with skis on his back, Santa with skis on his feet,
hey!
Santa doing a ski jump, Santa falling with skis on.
So you can always find us on Facebook. Just look for Pox and Puss Podcast. Also at Pox and Puss on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Pox Holiday on Instagram and Facebook.
I am at AT Puss in Boots on Twitter. I think that's it.
You can also find us on Appalachian Trials. Just go almost all the way to the bottom of the page, just above the PCT, and you'll find our little... you'll find the archives of all of our past episodes. Even some of our SoundCloud little things that we've put up there. Episodes are slowly going up on SoundCloud. I can only put up a certain amount without having to pay money. So like one episode a month, and every once in a while, like I just put up the 5-minute story about Bert Kreischer and a 5-minute story about Todd Glass. Bert Kreischer's story is pretty funny if you listen to it about the first time he went hiking. He's the host of Trip Flip on Travel Channel, if you've ever seen that show before. The first time he ever went hiking, he pulled his boots directly out of the box at the trailhead. So, yes. So you can find that on our SoundCloud page or on our Appalachian Trials page. Also, if you want to email us, just email me, poxholiday@gmail.com. If you go to poxandpuss.com and send a message there, it comes to me via poxholiday@gmail.com. Hey, if you are getting ready to hike this year and you think you're interesting, we'll be the judge of that. No. If you have an interesting story, or if you know somebody who's hiking, or you have a question about hiking in 2016, we're going to be doing some episodes leading up to that. Hopefully we're going to talk to maybe some people we've talked to in the past, maybe some new people. Maybe next month we're going to have on Carrot Quinn to talk about the book. Please go to Amazon and buy Carrot Quinn's book, Thru-Hiking Will Break Your Heart. It's awesome. We'll talk about it in a little over a month or so. Think of anything else, Puss?
I don't think so.
I think that we did a pretty darn good, concise job this time.
Oakley dokley.
We didn't really talk about a lot of our friends this time.
Yeah, it's true.
Not a lot of editing. Everything's coming up Milhouse.
Everything's just coming up Milhouse.
All right. We're going to go monthly. Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Well, let's just say this. We're going to go monthly because my job has changed recently. Things have just changed. And as opposed to trying to...
The times they are a-changing.
And you know what? If 2 episodes come out in a month...
Bonus.
Abundanza! But anyway, I have no idea what we were just talking about, but it'll all work out in the end when I edit it. Have fun, folks. Bye-bye. I definitely thought you were going to say something.
I did that on purpose.
Oh, I hate these flood pants. Hey, they're working. My feet are soaked, but my cups are bone dry. Everything's coming up Milhouse.